So we should be live.
Cool. Okay. So we've got the agenda over on GitHub, issue 419. The first item on the agenda is should libuv upgrades be sent for minor? I think Miles may have tagged this one. Yeah. Does anyone have any opinions on this? Particularly,
Is the question whether they could be December patch versus minor or major versus patch?
I'm not entirely sure. Does anyone else know the history of this one?
I guess if there's no rush, we might just wait till Miles if he was the one who tagged it.
Yeah. I guess if everyone knows of this issue, we can all weigh in if you like, and we'll leave it on the agenda until Miles can make it. Cool.
I guess in most cases, it does not have an impact anyway. So if there's like, do we have a patch release upcoming?
Of libuv?
No, in general, like because I mean, if the next release is only a Zenver minor, like in any release line, then it doesn't matter if it's Zenver patch or Zenver minor at the moment.
That's true. Yeah, they're both minors coming up for 8 and 10, I think. So yeah, probably fine. The next one is the v6.x backport. I think this is the NAPI one of Gabriel's. So Michael, you might have some information on this. I think last time we checked it needed a little change because it was breaking when I tried to land it. Yeah.
Okay, so that I don't think had been, let's see, which one is this? Add environmental cleanup hooks. This is on 6.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that was on Gabriel's radar when we talked on Monday. He didn't mention that was something he knew he needed to do.
Okay.
I guess we just need to copy him again.
Okay. Yeah, sure. It'd be good to get that one because I think this backport was part of the reason we agreed to do another v6.x because of the NAPI stability.
Right. I think as I remember, we were pushing for 8. Like we definitely want the changes backported to 8.6. I'm trying to remember, like this. I think this issue was open back in September, right?
Yeah.
So back in September, when there was 8 months left, it made a lot of sense to me. Now that there's a couple months left, I'm not sure it's as important.
Okay.
So I think it was, I think when I did look at the comments recently because Miles was, raising some concerns in terms of what was in 6 and so forth. And in this one in particular, it was kind of like, if we're doing a release, it would be good to get in, but don't do a release just for it, right?
Okay. So we kind of get agreement for a 6.x release. This one.
Yep. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So I think we agreed to do it. I just was, my recollection, it wasn't strictly that driven by this. It was driven by, let's look at the list and say, yeah, let's do one with the latest stuff, right?
Okay. I feel like it should go in though if we're doing one.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. So I guess we'll just wait for Gabriel to ping back.
Yeah, I can ping him on Twitter right now just to see if he's aware. When is the release planned for? Like just in terms of his timing?
It's not just yet. That's the next item I was just going to say.
Okay.
I was kind of thinking of first week of April because then that leaves 3 weeks in case something goes terribly wrong with those 6 or 7 commits to fix it before the official end of life date.
That makes sense to me.
So yeah, I think that was all I was going to ask on this item actually. Does everyone think that's a reasonable date? Probably first Tuesday in April.
+1 for me.
Yeah. I'll probably open the proposal pretty early, if not like later on today, and then at least it's there sitting for people to weigh in if there's anything they're concerned about. Okay. And next on the list is preparation for Node 12. So I don't know if everyone's seen this issue. I've kind of been working from James Snell's guide and following bits like creating test builds, etc. One thing I think came up on a build workgroup call is the build-related updates we need to do for Node 12. Michael, do you have any information? I think it was discussed on the TSC meeting as well.
Well, yeah. So we put a proposal together in terms of platforms and so forth. In terms of, yeah, the release on the April 23rd. I mean, I don't know that a week one way or the other is going to make a huge difference. Start creating RCs 1 week from March 23rd and release. Yeah, I think we set it for the 23rd. And if there's challenges in getting things updated in time for that, then we can maybe adjust.
Okay. Sure. Is it on the build work group's radar that things like creating sim links and editing the Jenkins compiler jobs will need to be changed for 12?
Sorry, so doing which things?
You know, when you run the Jenkins builds, it directs which machines it's actually going to build on. And we've got select compiler SH to flip between different compiler versions.
Yeah, those things would be part of the move up to newer machines. Like we first have to install the newer compilers, then we can start switching over that. So I think, you know, as soon as we have an updated compiler on the platform, we would update the selector scripts and the select compilers to do the right thing for master, and then you'll just get that by default in 12.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, that's good. Next thing is plan for 11.x release. I know, Ruben, you've got stage out today, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm just preparing 11.12.0, or I already prepared it. There were a few PRs on which I had to pull out again. And one, for example, was a crypto PR that did seem to break something that was not obvious immediately, and it's going to be reverted. Then there was a breaking change in the Streams API, which I had to back out again. And now there's even a third one coming up. And it seems like I also have to back out another crypto PR, which seems to break building against OpenSSL 1.10, which is a bit surprising to me as it still keeps on building for 1.0.2. But yeah, I don't know. It's just that way. This release...
Sorry, are those SAM's PRs to do the update to 1.1.1 or something else?
So, and that's what I wondered about, if it would actually be his, but at least Raphael says it's the crypto PR is from White, first name, gosh.
Brian White.
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
And the other one, which one was that?
I was just going to say, like, if it is Sam's ones, if you can reach out to him just to say, hey, this is what's happening, he'd probably help out.
Yeah. No, but I actually don't think it was his. Sure. Like, okay. There were a couple of minor conflicts in the one from Sam as well. So theoretically it could be, but all the conflicts in there were only about timestamps and hash values. Okay. So in that case, I just expected the newer values to be actually the valid ones.
Okay.
I resolved multiple conflicts while preparing this release, as there were lots of conflicts, at least like always minor ones, in like pretty much every 10 commits or so that I pulled in, there was at least one conflict. So it was a bit ugly, but
Okay.
oh well.
Yeah, no, the one I'm aware of is the getting us to 1.1.1, which is important. So
yeah,
not in the loop on the others, so I can't comment.
yeah. Then Citrix looks relatively fine as far as I can tell. Like Cheerio is definitely, they released a test library which has a test failure. So that's obvious. And Fastify, though, has 2 failures, which I'm just trying to verify again with Fastify, but it does not look like it's related to the build out of my perspective. And all others are just some noise, pretty much.
I think me and Miles saw the Fastify and Cheerio ones when we did the 10 release last week or the week before as well.
Yeah, so Fastify 2.00 was failing obviously all the time, but then they released 2.01.
Okay.
And that fixed pretty much the generic failure, but now there are 2 new failures, which is now there are only a few test failures, but they seem random. Okay. Pretty much. So I expect them to be actually flaky tests in their test suite. That's why I just want to check back with them right quick. Just about to open an issue there. And normally people from Fastify are relatively eager on dealing with things.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull out one more PR about to open SL, check if it then builds. And check with Fastify. Otherwise, I don't have anything blocking on what I see in this case for this release. Would be great if you could have another look also at Citrix. It's always a bit works to look at the results.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're good. Let's see. Shelley's offered to do the last April release here, so we're pretty much sorted up until the end of April, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
About that, by the way, like I would probably be right. So a little bit off topic. We should probably have another issue for it. Like landing PRs on our staging branches. So far, we normally dealt with it by always waiting until we actually prepare the release to pull those PRs in. But I'm just wondering if it would make sense to pull in at least all the Zenver patches right away if there's an active backport to any release line.
I think historically, at least when Gibson and Miles were working on it, they did try to keep on top of them at like a weekly cadence, just try and pull them all in, at least the patch ones when they could. I think it's the term of people's time and whether they've got time to keep going back and pulling them in. I guess you can try.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it pretty much just applies to any release line out of our perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was also something on one of the issues suggesting that maybe we should expand who can land on stadium. I've seen that thrown around a bit.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a concern because when a release is in its RC phase, at least for LTS, if other people who don't know that the release is in RC phase land loads of commits, we can rebase, but it might just make our rebasing a bit more confusing or a bit more prone to error if people have landed stuff that we didn't land if we're preparing the release.
But I guess normally, like we don't have a lot of commits happening at the same time, and we normally know, like we could even say, okay, please don't land anything right now anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Like have a while it's in our C phase, please don't land anything. But
yes,
around that you can. Yeah, that would work.
Can we even set the repo in a different state, like read only or something during that phase?
No, not
No. Okay.
Like I originally, or like a while ago, I proposed to actually also have 2 staging branches for each release line, one for patch releases and one for a minor, to actually be able to immediately pull in each backport PR. Because then we know, okay, this is the patch release and that's fine. We can just work on that. And the minors are landing as well. So I would actually like to implement that. If we just go ahead and split up our staging branches for the release lines, if no one is against it.
I think someone else posted on another issue last week about why do we have like v8.x staging branches? Why don't we just open a proposal branch? And I guess that's kind of the same idea, apart from we'd have a patch proposal and a minor proposal, which would still be staging branches, but
yeah, I mean it's pretty much identical because I mean the branch itself is almost a proposal, right?
Yeah.
In the state it is.
Mm.
Is that going to cause any more force pushing or less force pushing?
I guess actually less in the end, because if we land them directly. But for the backports, it would still be as much back. They would probably have to rebase often anyway. Like if you have multiple backports that all conflict in a way with each other or touch the same code, and then one is backported, then the other backport would have to rebase on top of that one.
Yeah.
Right.
But you probably mean about sorry?
You have to do that at least once. I've just seen a few times, I think, where it had to be done a couple times. But
yeah, but in this case, like let's say you have 3 PRs and now you land the first one. Now both others have conflicts. Now they both rebase. Now you land the second one. Now the third one has a conflict again because of the second one. So that's, as far as I've seen it, pretty much it. Or do you mean on the proposal itself?
I think it was just it seemed a few times where like there were force pushes to the staging branch, which then required like outstanding PRs to be rebased and revalidated a few times. I could be misremembering though. So
that does happen. Certainly one happened last week, and that's because I backed some commits out of the V8 6.x staging branch. If we back some commits out, those commits will appear in the person's PR if they raised it before we backed them out.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah, I've just done that, for example, with this release proposal and also with the last one. Like with this one, there were at least 3 PRs, as it seems, that officially looked fine in the beginning. But then after a couple of days, someone was like, oh, wait, this is actually breaking something very subtle. And then that's why that's why I had to back it out in the end, even though it was not obvious from the beginning.
Yeah, for Miles and I, it was Sitchin failures. And normally when you run Sitchin, once we've got a proposal up together, and we saw a Sitchin failure and then had to go and back something out. So it's kind of almost unavoidable.
Yeah, okay, understood.
Okay, that's a good plan. How do you see it working? Like, can we suddenly switch over to that? Or would you perhaps create maybe 2 additional branches and start trying to automatically land things?
So the long-term goal would definitely to automatically land things, but I still guess that's a long-term perspective, sadly. But I believe a first step would be to indeed just start with these branches right away, and then we can immediately land them when the release team gave a looking good for one of the PRs. so they can land on the release staging branch. Like for the right one, the patch release and the minor release. Obviously, it's a little bit of extra work in this case, but we can probably improve our tooling as well to try to, like, I would like to have the tooling to first land all the minor PS. Sorry, my throat. And then backports the PR as well to the patch one. And hopefully there's no conflict in between, because obviously there could happen more conflicts in the patch release line than in the Zemver minor release line. Because it's like with the Zemver majors, there is a PR just missing in between.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
The thing I think you probably need to do first is like a PR to update the documentation for how the
right
with the branches, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea. And that's something I'll do right afterwards. That's good. Suggest how to do it.
That's another thing. I don't know if it's documented anywhere, but how many approvals do we need on backport PRs? I think it's do the normal 2 reviews within a week apply, or because some of the backports don't have many. I've gone to backport PRs that have 0 reviews, and sometimes, for example, there's one at the moment that's OpenSSL related. So I don't feel like I have the context of the actual area of code to give that this looks good for Node 10. So I don't know if we have a requirement that there's at least a review on the backport PRs.
And that's a pretty good point out of my perspective. I've seen that as well. I personally would suggest in that case, like either you feel comfortable that it does the same. What I normally do is like I compare the original PR and compare it with the new PR and see the diff and look at the diff. And then I just like, if that seems pretty clear, like because normally the actual conflict is minor.
Yeah.
Then you normally are able to tell, okay, that looks fine or no. So if that looks fine, then I'm happy to land things, but there might be some others where we should just call in like some people to actually look at it actively out of my perspective.
Yeah, sure, okay.
But if you're going to update the flow, this might be a good time to clarify what the review requirements are. Like if it's just the same as for our regular ones, just say that, or if it's something else, propose that. Because I can see that there's somewhere it's like, if it's a backport that just lands, I guess maybe we already have that, but like, one person from the release team looking at that and saying, oh, it's a clean land, that might be just enough, right?
In a way, I guess it is mainly about landing cleanly and passing the tests. When I backport things, or when I prepare a release line and landing more PRs on the staging branches, I normally try to fix minor issues, minor conflicts right away. So in this case, it's like my responsibility in a way to actually do resolve the conflict properly. And that's when I decide, okay, do I feel comfortable with this one? Or do I say, this is too complicated, I'm not able to resolve this right away. I'm going to add the label backport requested.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to see that process written down, and we can kind of start working on implementing it. I was hoping that, I don't know how many people are planning to attend the Berlin Collaborator Summit, if we could have a session that would look at automation in the release team and the release in general, maybe sync up with Joy and get Node land, and how we could maybe leverage some of the work she's done over there and make it work for us.
So I've talked yesterday to her, about branch diff and the other one, I forgot the other name. Because like branch diff, one of the huge issues for me for each proposal is running that tool takes like ages for me. And I mean like ages. It's not a few minutes. It's like I wait in half an hour.
Okay.
It's like I normally start it and just do something else in the meanwhile until it gives me a result.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Michael and me, we did the same thing and like right next to each other to verify everything I'm doing is identical. And yeah, his response is significantly faster. I don't know. I believe it has something to do with the branches and the internals, how the tool works. And I have like, for example, lots of branches on my remote, and I have lots of remotes and so on. So I guess it pulls in a lot of information that is not necessary actually, and therefore takes so long.
I'm also not sure if y'all have run into this problem, but one other thing that I've noticed is that the way that branch diff is written, it often trips the abuse detection threshold for GitHub's API.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, which is also problematic. And I've actually, because of that, like because I've also tried to use this and hit that myself, I've poked around a little bit internally, and I think there like might be a way to rewrite it a little bit so that it stops doing that, which I'm happy to try to look into a little more.
So Joey, like as we spoke about yesterday, she's probably looking into rewriting the whole thing from scratch.
Awesome.
And then just adding it to util core, Node core utils.
Is it triggering the abuse protection in part because it's run without being logged in?
No, it's about the request number.
Yeah, okay. Because it's hitting so many, like it's because it's like basically just like hitting hitting so many endpoints in such a short period of time. GitHub thinks that it's a like some kind of like a spam situation, and
I just thought there was a lower limit when you were anonymous versus a logged in user for that kind of stuff.
That might be, but I believe it doesn't matter in this case because it's like we send really a whole lot of requests in that case. And with the limit, it's a bit weird because we send, as far as I know, like for each label, each description and so on, own request each time. But it should be pretty straightforward to actually have a single GraphQL request in the beginning up front that checks, for example, the last 300 PRs from master. And then there should be very few requests afterwards.
Yeah. It's definitely something we should look into, because it should help with our automation and things like that. Okay. Last thing on the agenda was the Q2 release plan. And I kind of just wrote a draft plan, kind of following the one that Miles wrote for Q1. I've gone for RC on the first Tuesday of each month, and then the release on the 3rd. We can move that if you like, but I've just put that in there as a loose plan. We've got time to review it. I think we're still sticking to one Semver minor per quarter if we can help it, unless something major comes up that we need to bump the minor.
Just as a question, I mean, I'm not doing the LTS releases at the moment. I guess we do the patch releases mainly because we are afraid that Semver minors might break more than the patches, or what was actually the original intention that we don't make more Semver minor releases?
Yeah, I think it was exactly the first thing you said. It predates me being involved, but I think that was the original reason.
Yes, it's basically, we make a trade-off between risk and benefit, and in LTS, the expectation is that the users have a higher desire for stability versus new features. So
Definitely.
we haven't basically excluded Semver minors, which are new features, but we don't do them as often, and they don't, versus current where they pretty much get backported automatically. We should be reviewing the list in 10 and saying, do these ones make sense? Are they too risky or not risky? And making sure that what does go in isn't going to affect that expectation of higher stability.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'd say that's extra work, so doing it less frequently makes sense unless we have to do otherwise.
I guess, Ruben, if you had your 2 proposals, then it might be nicer if we did just bump Semver minors when we needed to. Because if they're all automatically landing, then we don't have to queue things up so much.
Yeah, I believe especially for the way you deal with with these releases in the LTS release line, that would especially help there, because you have multiple patch releases and then you have to queue up the minors in between, and then you have more conflicts, or in the end actually less things land.
Yeah, we'd have less conflicts if we weren't so strict on waiting for a minor. Definitely something to think about, the change. Okay, I think we're good. Miles is on the hook for the minor release of Node 10, which on that note, somewhere I have a gist, whatever it is. Where is it? We've got quite a backlog of commits to audit for 10.16. I think we have about 800. So I'm starting to go through those to help Miles out and starting to label things. But if anyone has any time to audit some of these commits and land.
Yeah, I can jump in on that too.
Cool.
How do you do it?
Which part? Like the landing itself, or?
No, you say you audit them. So in what way? I guess you just go through the list and see which one is landing cleanly and doesn't cause any test failures, or?
Sorry, it's kind of a nebulous process in the sense that you kind of have to develop an intuition for it. So you look at something and you kind of would look at the original PR and see if there's any debate on that. Because if there's some kind of debate on that, you might want to ping the original author and see what their opinions are. If the test passed cleanly and it doesn't seem to affect end user code, then it's usually fine to just sort of go ahead and do. If it fails, I guess just sort of ping the original backboard author.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It took a while, learning to open it and be oh, are there any related issues? Does this look like a risky change in general? And things like that.
Because I guess what I was just gonna say, I think what happened before is Miles would go through some sessions with Beth when she was doing it the first time, or Shelley.
Yeah.
So that might be the path. If you're interested, Ruben, to work with Beth or Shelley in a session just to get the feel for what they're doing.
Yeah, that would be actually pretty good.
It does mean it might be more difficult to automate, or we may just have to land everything and then audit and back things out that we think are risky.
We do have the time delay with the LTS release lines, right? We have, I believe, no PR is allowed to land if it is not in a release for 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's already a pretty good protection out of my perspective. Because normally we for example, with the 11.11 release, we broke Jest, and it took, I think, 1 day until people started complaining very loudly. And so 2 weeks is normally a pretty good time frame if it is in a release already. And it also is normally piling up anyway, like for a couple of months before, due to the way the releases are prepared, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like when we try to go into the direction of more automation, we probably have to stick to rules like that. But I don't see it as an urgent matter right now, as we are very far from automating things.
Yeah.
As a general comment, I think the only other concern I would have there is that a lot of the backports that land is that it's very hard to sort of go by the metric of like, if it fails, just like back it out if we try to land everything first, because the problem is that so many of the things like land in certain order. And I think like
Absolutely.
that's like really hard to get by automation, is like, how do you know the order in which things should land based on the changes that are made in like closely coupled commit sets?
But actually, Joey built a tool to see which commits are based on which. So what is necessary to pull in first? It's actually already in Node Core utils. It's pretty cool. It takes a while, but it's
awesome.
a nice feature.
I'll check that out.
Yeah. And besides that, it's like if we automate things at some point, I mean, we've spoken about that before, like on the Collaborator Summit, it would probably be best to stop backporting anything when there's a conflict, and then first decide on if this should be backported at all. And if it should be backported, then first backport that one, and then continue automatically backporting others.
Yeah.
You see my point, Shelley?
Yeah. In that case, I think it's a lot more doable than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So we've gone through anything. Is there anything else anyone wants to mention?
I think Miles had in mind that we should go through the list of things to land in at least this last 6.x release.
The 6.x one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I maybe I don't have enough context, but he seemed to think, there was some concern over some, or some new ones that were being asked for, kind of thing.
So one that was asked for was by Jordan, which was this PR here, is the instance of array. He doesn't want the whole PR. He would just like small part of the PR, which is where the kind of questions came from. Apparently it fixes something. Linked it, didn't it? I'll find it. Something in jest it fixes.
I mean, if it is only the array is array, we could probably open a dedicated PR for it to only change that. Because I don't think there is a big issue about that. Does anyone disagree?
The concern was, what's the risk of something that hasn't been in the other releases long enough, or it was kind of yeah, go ahead.
If we only change the instance of check to array as array, nothing else, like a dedicated PR only for this.
Yeah, because I think what made me initially back it out is that I saw these related errors in 10.10, but I don't think they're specific to the array as array part of that PR. I think it's the other parts of the PR that cause their problems.
I mean, I'll just open a PR and then we'll see if others agree to it or not. I guess that would be another way.
Yeah.
Like if not, none disagrees in this round at the moment about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. That's the easiest way of addressing that. Okay. I think Miles did want to go through the Node 8 and Node 10 Semver miners. I don't think we have a list of those yet, but I can either open an issue or book some more time in next meeting to go through the list of Semver miners. I don't know what's easiest.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If we don't have the list, then can't do it today anyway.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to mention? No? Cool. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks as well. Bye.
Bye.